She didn't fall. Someone crushed her ankle.
The phone rang in the therapist's office long after sunset. When the building had settled in, its evening quiet, and the city outside softened into distant traffic and rain-slicked streets, Dr. Elena Moore stared at the number on her screen for a full 3 seconds before pressing call, her thumb heavy, her chest tight. She had promised herself she would never dial this man. She had promised her patient the same. The line connected on the second ring. Yes? The voice was low, controlled, bored in the way only powerful men could afford to be. "My name is Dr. Elena Moore," she said, keeping her tone steady. "I'm calling regarding Sophia Romano." There was a pause. Not silence. She could hear breathing, but the kind of pause that made people feel small. "She's not my concern anymore," the man said at last. "She is lying in a hospital bed with her ankle crushed," Elena replied. "And no, she didn't fall. That did it." The air shifted, even through the phone. "What did you say?" Sophia lay awake in the dim hospital room, listening to the rhythmic hiss of the oxygen machine and the faint beeping that marked her heart's stubborn persistence. Her leg was suspended in a cradle of metal and bandages, pain radiating up her body in dull waves that never fully receded. She had learned how to breathe through it. She had learned how to stay quiet. The doctor had said it was a clean break. The nurse had said she was lucky. Neither of them had seen the way the man's boot came down. Neither of them had heard the sound her bones made. Her phone buzzed on the side table. A text from the babysitter. "Luke is asleep. He asked for you twice." Sophia closed her eyes, the ache in her chest sharper than the one in her leg. "I'm okay," she whispered to the empty room, as if that lie might drift down the hall and find her son. She hadn't planned for Dr. Moore to make the call. She had begged her not to. "You don't understand him," Sophia had said earlier that day, gripping the edge of the therapy couch with white knuckles. "You don't pull men like that back into your life. They don't come quietly." Elena had looked at her with something harder than sympathy. Resolve. "And you don't let someone destroy you in silence." Now, miles away, in a glass-walled office overlooking the city he owned in all but name, Alessandro De Luca stood from his chair so slowly it was almost deliberate. One hand rested on the desk, fingers splayed, knuckles pale. "Who did this?" he asked. Elena exhaled. "You already know the answer, or you wouldn't be standing." Alessandro ended the call without another word. He stared out at the city, lights glittering like something fragile he could crush if he chose. Sophia Romano. The name felt like a bruise he'd learned to live with. 3 years. That's how long it had been since she walked away. Belly flat then, eyes burning, telling him she wanted nothing from him. He had let her go because he believed love was possession, and possession was something he already had too much of. He reached for his jacket. "Find Marco Vitale," he said to no one in particular. The room stirred instantly. Back in the hospital, Sophia shifted, pain flaring as she tried to sit up. The door opened softly. A nurse peeked in. "You have a visitor." "I didn't ask for." Sophia stopped. Alessandro filled the doorway like a shadow given shape. Dark suit, unreadable eyes. The kind of presence that bent rooms around it. For a moment neither of them spoke. The years collapsed into a single breath. "You shouldn't be here," she said finally. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You shouldn't be hurt." Her laugh was brittle. "Funny how neither of us gets what we want." His gaze dropped to her leg, the machinery holding her together. Something flickered there, anger, regret, something sharper. "They told me you fell." She met his eyes, unflinching. They lied. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. Alessandro reached into his pocket, pulling out his phone as it buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "Marco Vitale just admitted it," he said quietly. "Said it was a warning." Sophia swallowed. "A warning for what?" Alessandro looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time his control slipped, for touching what he thought was still mine. And down the hall, a small boy slept clutching a worn toy car, unaware that the man who had just stepped back into his mother's life was about to change everything. Sophia turned her face toward the window, away from Alessandro. as if the city lights outside could offer shelter. "I'm not yours," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Not anymore. Not ever again." Alessandro didn't answer right away. He moved closer instead, pulling a chair to the side of her bed, careful not to let it scrape the floor. The restraint in that small act unsettled her more than any display of anger would have. This was the man who never softened his movements for anyone. "I didn't say you were," he replied. "I said someone believed you were, and that makes it better." She finally looked at him. "That men like you think women are territory?" His jaw tightened. "It makes it dangerous." She let out a slow breath. "Danger was the day I realized loving you meant disappearing. That landed." Alessandro's eyes dropped, just for a second, before he masked it. "You left without telling me why." "I told you exactly why," she said. "You just didn't hear it." The door opened again quietly. Dr. Moore stepped in, stopping short when she saw Alessandro seated there. Her posture stiffened, but she didn't retreat. "Sophia," she said gently. "I can come back later." "No," Sophia said. "Stay." Alessandro stood. The room seemed to expand once he did, like it needed more air. "Doctor," he acknowledged. "I didn't call you to negotiate," Alina said, meeting his gaze. "I called because my patient was assaulted, and the people responsible operate in your shadow. They won't touch her again," Alessandro said. There was no bravado in it, just certainty. "That's not enough," Sophia snapped. "I don't want protection. I want distance." "You don't get distance from men like Marco Vitali," Alessandro said. "Not once they decide you're a message." Alina watched them both, then turned to Sophia. "Has he threatened you before?" Sophia hesitated. That hesitation was answer enough. "Yes," she said softly, not directly, just reminders. Looks, words chosen carefully. Alessandro's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Because I didn't want Luca anywhere near your world," she shot back. The name hung in the air. Elena blinked. "Luca?" Sophia's face drained of color. She closed her eyes, realizing too late what she'd done. Alessandro froze. "Who is Luca?" he asked, slowly. Sophia's throat tightened. "My son." The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls had leaned in to listen. "How old?" Alessandro asked. She didn't want to answer. Every instinct screamed to protect, to deflect, to lie. But she was tired of carrying everything alone. 2.5. Alessandro did the math without effort. His breath left him in a sharp exhale he couldn't hide. "Mine," he said. Not a question. "No," Sophia said immediately. "He's mine." Alina took a step back, hand flying to her mouth. "Sophia, you had no right," Alessandro said, voice low, dangerous in its calm. "No right to keep my child from me, and you had no right to a child you would have used as leverage," she shot back, "or armor, or a weakness someone else would exploit. You decided that for me," he demanded. "Yes," she said, tears finally spilling, "because someone had to choose him over power." Silence crashed down between them. Alessandro turned away, pressing his palms against the wall, head bowed. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. "Does he know me?" "No," she whispered. "And he doesn't need to." Elena cleared her throat softly. "Sophia, with what's happening, this changes things. If Marco believes, he doesn't." Sophia said quickly, "No one does." Alessandro turned back, eyes dark. "They will." A knock came at the door. A uniformed officer peeked in. "Ms. Romano, there's been an incident reported near your residence." Sophia's heart lurched. "My son," she breathed. "He's unharmed," the officer said quickly. "But your building was entered. No theft. Just a message." Alessandro was already reaching for his phone. "I'm moving them," he said. "No," Sophia said, panic rising. "You're not taking him." "I'm keeping him alive," Alessandro replied, meeting her gaze with something raw and unyielding. "With or without your permission." And for the first time since he walked into the room, Sophia was afraid not of losing control but of how much she already had. The drive out of the hospital was quiet in the way storms were quiet before breaking. Sophia sat in the back of the black sedan, her injured leg carefully braced. every turn sending a sharp reminder through her body. Alessandro sat opposite her, hands folded, gaze fixed forward. He hadn't tried to touch her. That, somehow, hurt more than if he had. "You didn't ask where we're going," he said after a long stretch of silence. "I already know," she replied. "Somewhere with gates. Somewhere I can't leave without asking." "That's not true." She looked at him then, eyes tired, unafraid. "It's always true with you." The car slowed, tires crunching over gravel. The estate rose ahead of them, iron gates, stone walls, discreet lights casting soft halos in the night. Security moved with practiced ease, opening doors before they were fully closed. Inside, the house was warm, too warm, like it had been waiting. Sofia was helped onto a couch by a woman with kind eyes who didn't ask questions. Alessandro gave quiet instructions. All of them obeyed without hesitation. "Where's Luca?" Sofia asked. "In the guest room," Alessandro said. "Sleeping." He didn't wake. Relief hit her so hard she had to close her eyes. "I want to see him." Of course. The room was dim, lit only by a night lamp shaped like a moon. Luca lay curled on his side, clutching his toy car. Dark lashes fanned against his cheeks. Sofia moved to the edge of the bed, fingers brushing his hair, her breath hitching. "He looks like you," Alessandro said quietly from the doorway. She stiffened. I mean his eyes," he added. "They're observant. Like he's always watching." She didn't respond. She couldn't afford to. Love was loud enough without adding fear to it. Back downstairs, the house settled into a cautious calm. Sofia was given a room close to Luca's. Alessandro lingered in the hallway, unsure of where to place himself now that the truth was out. "You can't buy your way into his life," Sofia said softly. "I'm not trying to," he replied. "I'm trying to protect him." Protection always comes with a price in your world. So does neglect. That stung. She turned to face him. "I left because I knew what loving you would cost. I wasn't willing to pay it with a child." Alessandro nodded once. "And I wasn't willing to be weak. You still aren't." He watched her for a long moment. "I'm learning." The next morning, the house woke early. Phones buzzed. Doors opened and closed with urgency. Sofia sat at the breakfast table, Luca on her lap, spooning cereal with clumsy determination. "Mommy," Luca said, squinting at Alessandro across the room. "Who's that man?" The room went still. "That's Alessandro," Sofia said carefully. "He's helping us for a little while." Alessandro crouched to Luca's level. "Hi," he said, softer than Sofia had ever heard him speak. "I like your car." Luca steadied him, then held it out. "It's fast." Alessandro smiled, despite himself. "I can tell." Later Dr. Moore arrived, her expression tight. "Marco Vitali's missing," she said quietly to Sofia. "His people are nervous." Sofia's stomach dropped. "Missing how?" "Vanished," Alessandro said. "No body, no statement." "That's worse," Sofia said. "That means retaliation." "Or surrender," he replied. "Men like him don't surrender." As if summoned by her words, Alessandro's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it. Sofia watched his face change control, giving way to something colder. "They know about Luca," he said when he returned. Her blood ran cold. "How?" "They followed the hospital." Someone talked. Sofia stood, panic flaring. "Then this ends now. I take my son and I leave." "You won't make it past the gate," Alessandro said gently. "Not today. You don't get to decide that." "I do," he said, voice breaking through his restraint. "Because this is my war now." Luca tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, why are you yelling?" She knelt, pulling him close, heart pounding. "I'm not yelling, baby. I'm just scared." Alessandro watched them, something inside him cracking open. For the first time, the cost of his world stood in front of him, small and trusting. Outside, engines roared in the distance, and Alessandro knew the choice he'd been avoiding had arrived. The sound of engines faded before anyone reached the windows. That was what frightened Sofia the most. In her experience, danger didn't announce itself loudly. It crept, it waited. Alessandro lifted a hand and the room stilled. Security froze mid-step, eyes on him. Lock the outer gate, he said calmly. No weapons visible. Not yet. Not yet. Sophia echoed. He met her gaze. If they came to attack, we'd already know. Luca had gone quiet, his small body pressed against Sophia's side. Children sensed shifts long before adults named them. She smoothed his hair, forcing her breathing to slow, forcing calm into her voice. Sweetheart, why don't you go back to your room with Anna and play for a bit? Luca looked between them, uncertain. I don't like the loud outside. I know, she said softly. I'll come see you soon. When he was gone, escorted gently away, the air rushed back into Sophia's lungs. You said missing men don't surrender, she said. So what is this? Alessandro walked to the window at last, parting the curtain just enough to see the drive. A single black car idled beyond the gate. No convoy. No weapons drawn. It's a message, he said. A test. The intercom buzzed. Alessandro picked it up. Speak. Marco Vitale's voice crackled through, thinner than it should have been. You've been busy, Alessandro. Sophia felt the room tilt. Hearing his voice sent a jolt through her leg, phantom pain flaring. She gripped the back of a chair. You crossed a line, Alessandro replied evenly. Marco laughed softly. You always did think you owned the lines. You touched a woman under my protection, Alessandro said. And my child. A pause. Then, Marco said. So it's true. Sophia's heart slammed against her ribs. You told him, she whispered to Alessandro. No, he said quietly, but he guessed. Let's not pretend this is about justice, Marco continued. You disappeared for 3 years, left gaps. Power doesn't like gaps. I filled one. With a boot, Alessandro said. With a reminder, Marco corrected. You taught me that. Sophia couldn't stay silent. She stepped forward. You broke my ankle to frighten me, she said, voice shaking but clear. Congratulations. You succeeded. Marco's breath caught for just a second. You always were braver than you looked. Alessandro's eyes hardened. Leave. Not until we settle this, Marco said. I want assurances. You want forgiveness, Alessandro replied. You won't get it. The car engine revved faintly, impatient. Marco sighed. Then I suppose we'll see how far you're willing to go for a woman who ran from you. The line went dead. Sophia sagged into the chair, legs trembling. This is my fault. No, Alessandro said immediately. This is mine. She looked at him. Really looked. The man who had once told her love was a liability now stood rigid with it. Fear etched into the lines he never allowed anyone to see. What are you going to do? She asked. I'm going to end it, he said, without blood, if possible. And if it's not... He didn't answer. That afternoon stretched long and heavy. Sophia stayed with Luca, building towers on the rug, laughing too loudly at nothing, pretending the walls weren't listening. Alessandro stayed away, locked in rooms she'd never been allowed into before. When he emerged at dusk, his face was pale, eyes shadowed. They're backing off, he said. For now. Sophia exhaled, relief mixing with dread. That's not the same as gone. No, he agreed. It's worse. It means they're waiting. That night, Luca fell asleep beside her, one small hand curled into her shirt. Sophia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every sound a potential threat. The door creaked softly. Alessandro stood there hesitant. He asked for water, he said quietly. I brought it. She watched as he set the glass down with care, his movements awkward, restrained. When he turned to leave, she spoke. You can stay. For a minute. He sat on the edge of the chair, hands clasped. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Be this. No one does, she said. You just show up. He nodded slowly, eyes on Luca. I won't let my world take him from you. Her voice broke. I don't want him to grow up afraid. I don't either, Alessandro said. And for the first time, Sophia believed he meant it. Outside, beyond the walls, the city waited. The next morning dawned in silence, a fragile kind that felt almost sacred, the kind that begged you to believe the storm had passed. Sophia watched Luca play with his toy cars on the living room floor, sunlight cutting through the curtains in thin golden slivers. For a moment, she allowed herself to forget the black cars, the threats, the man who had crushed her ankle. Alessandro sat across from her, a cup of coffee balanced in his hands, watching her watch Luca. It was quiet, but the tension hadn't left. She could feel it, that weight in the air, like a storm that had paused but wasn't over. "You've changed," Sophia said funnily, breaking the silence. He looked up, eyebrows raising. "I don't think so." "You're softer around him," she said, nodding toward Luca. "You wouldn't have cared about a child like this before." His jaw tightened. "I care now. That's enough change for you." Sophia shook her head. "Not nearly enough," she whispered. They spoke little after that. Words felt fragile, like stepping on glass, and neither wanted to shatter them. Luca giggled, pushing his car across the floor, and something inside Alessandro twisted a longing, a regret, a hope. He wanted to be careful, wanted to be better, but old instincts pulled it at him. Hours later, Sophia received a text that made her stomach twist. "Meet me, Marco Vitali, midnight." She showed Alessandro immediately. His face darkened, the casual control of the morning gone. "You're not going," he said. "I have to," she insisted. "I can't just ignore this." "He won't stop. Not until he knows I'm alone." Alessandro stood, walking toward her, hands clenched. "You think I'll let him see you alone? Not after what he did?" "I have to," she said again. "For Luca. For me. I need him to see I'm not afraid." Alessandro moved closer, his voice dropping. "You're not thinking clearly. This isn't bravery. It's foolishness." She looked up at him, eyes blazing, despite the lingering pain in her leg. "I've spent 3 years being careful, hiding, being silent. That ends tonight." He studied her for a long moment, and for the first time, his expression softened, not with affection, exactly, but with recognition. He realized she was no longer the woman who had fled his world. She had grown stronger, unshakable in her own way. "Fine," he said finally. "We go together. But on my terms." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. On your terms." Midnight came with a chill that sank into her bones. Alessandro drove, silent except for the hum of the engine. Sophia kept her hands folded in her lap, heart hammering, every nerve alive. She knew the moment Marco appeared, nothing would feel safe again. They reached the abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Alessandro parked behind a line of shipping containers, shadows hiding the car from view. He handed her a flashlight. "Stay behind me," he said. No sudden movements. The warehouse was quiet at first. Too quiet. Echoes of dripping water, creaking metal, and distant hums filled the empty space. Then, from the shadows, a figure stepped forward. Marco Vitali, smiling, smooth, dangerous. Well, he said, voice silk over steel. "Sophia Romano, I almost didn't recognize you with all this." His eyes flicked to Alessandro. "And you brought company." Alessandro's hand brushed against the gun at his hip, though he made no move to draw it. "I didn't come for a fight," he said. "I came to end this." Marco laughed, a cold sound that made Sophia shiver. "End it? You think I can just disappear? You think I play fair?" "You broke her," Alessandro said, voice low. "You tried to warn her. You crushed her ankle." "Correction," Marco said smoothly. "I sent a message, and it worked." Sophia stepped forward, ignoring the pain shooting up her leg. "Enough." Her voice cracked through the cavernous space. "You're done. You have no right to hurt anyone I love. Not me, not Luca, not anyone. Stay away." Marco's smile faltered. "Brave girl," he said, almost impressed. "You really do have fire." Alessandro's gaze hardened. "You misread her fire, Marco. You misread it, if you think you have any leverage." Marco's eyes narrowed. "And if I refuse to leave?" Alessandro took a slow step toward him. "Then we finish this tonight. But not with guns, not with fists, with consequences you won't forget." Sophia's pulse raced. The air was electric. Every instinct screamed danger. But she didn't step back. She looked at Alessandro, noticing the way his jaw set, the rare vulnerability in his eyes that he was fighting to hide. For the first time, she saw him not the man of power, not the Mafia boss, but the man who had loved her and still loved her, scarred and complicated. Marco's smirk returned. "Interesting. I think I'll take my chances." And then the shadows around the warehouse shifted. subtle movement betraying the presence of men she didn't recognize. Sophia realized with a sinking heart that the night was far from over. Alessandro's hand found hers. Tight, protective, steady. A silent promise she didn't need him to speak. And somewhere deep inside, Sophia realized that maybe, just maybe, this night would change everything. The first shot rang out. The shot wasn't meant for her. Sophia knew that the instant it cracked through the air, sharp and metallic, bouncing off the walls of the warehouse. Her body froze, heart hammering as instinct and fear collided. Alessandro's hand shot out, pulling her down behind a stack of wooden crates, shielding her like she weighed more than the world. "Stay low," he hissed, eyes scanning the shadows where Marco and his men had appeared. The dim light from the warehouse's hanging bulbs flickered, throwing long, jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Sophia pressed herself close to the wood, wincing as pain shot through her ankle. The bandages had done little to dull the memory of it. The crush, the sin, brutal weight that had broken her trust in the world. She clenched her teeth. "I am not afraid," she told herself, even as adrenaline sharpened her senses. Alessandro's movements were precise, economical. He moved silently through the shadows, rifle in hand, eyes cutting through the dim. He wasn't just protecting her. He was calculating, measuring every step, anticipating every attack. She'd seen him in power before, commanding armies and feared alike. But this was different. This was personal. A figure lunged from the corner, Marco, closer than she expected. Alessandro shifted, intercepting him. Sophia could hear the scrape of shoes against concrete, the sharp crack of gunmetal, and then Marco's voice, cold but strained. "You think you can scare me? You've changed nothing, Alessandro. We've changed everything," Alessandro growled. His body pressed Marco back, not with brute force, but with sheer dominance. Every inch of space was contested, every movement a warning. Sophia realized the years of separation had hardened him in ways that went beyond fear. He had grown responsible, deliberate, and terrifyingly protective. Sophia's hands shook, not from fear, but from the intensity of it all. "Luca," she whispered to herself. She thought of him sleeping so peacefully at the estate, oblivious to the danger. "I won't let him see this side of the world, not yet." A second shot rang out, closer this time. It pinged off the metal crates, the sound ricocheting in her skull. She pressed her face into the wood, stifling a scream. Alessandro's hand was on her back, grounding her, a lifeline in the chaos. "Move!" he barked. Sophia scrambled, every movement careful to avoid her damaged leg. She limped, the old pain stabbing sharp, and Alessandro caught her arm mid-step, guiding her with a gentleness she didn't expect. "Not a word," he said. "Stay with me." The air was thick now, the smell of gunpowder mixing with dust and sweat. Marco's men were visible, emerging from the shadows, faces tense, ready. Alessandro's jaw tightened. "Enough," he shouted, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed to pause. Marco froze, just enough. "You can't protect her forever," he said, voice low but defiant. "One slip, and you underestimate me," Alessandro cut in sharply. "And you underestimate her." His eyes flicked to Sophia, who met his gaze despite her fear. There was fire in hers now, a calm determination tempered by pain and years of survival. Marco's smirk faltered. Alessandro stepped forward, commanding the space between them, with an authority that made men hesitate. Sophia realized, in that moment, that this wasn't just about her ankle or the past. It was about every choice Alessandro had refused to make, every regret he had carried silently. And now he was choosing. A sudden movement to the side caught her attention. One of Marco's men lunged, but Alessandro was faster, tackling him to the ground. Metal clanged. Sophia's breath caught. Her instincts screamed to flee, but she stayed, captivated, horrified, and oddly relieved by the control Alessandro exerted. Then Marco lunged himself, reckless and wild, and Alessandro met him in the center of the room. They collided, not just as two men, but as two lives entwined in past regrets, power struggles, and unspoken love. Sophia felt the pull in her chest, the tension that stretched across years, finally snapping into clarity. Somewhere in the chaos, a gun clattered to the floor. Shots rang out again, ricocheting off steel beams. Alessandro pressed Marco against the wall, pinning him in a move both brutal and intimate. Sophia's hands flew to her mouth. "Stay back." Alessandro growled. His eyes, dark and stormy, locked onto hers. In that gaze was promise, warning, and an unspoken question, "Will you trust me?" Sophia swallowed, nodding imperceptibly. "I trust you," she thought, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and relief. Alessandro turned back to Marco, voice low and deadly. "You touch her again, or my son, and you won't live to regret it. Understood?" Marco's defiance faltered. For the first time he hesitated, looking past Alessandro and seeing Sophia standing there, not weak, not cowering, but solid, unbroken. "Yes," Marco muttered, though it was more a whisper of surrender than agreement. Alessandro released him, keeping his eyes sharp, and Marco stumbled back into the shadows, retreating. His men followed, leaving the warehouse eerily silent, save for Sophia's ragged breathing and the faint echo of footsteps fading into distance. Alessandro turned to her, every line of his body taut with tension. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I'm okay," she lied, though her ankle throbbed. He knelt in front of her, inspecting her carefully. "You're lying," he said. "I've survived worse," she said, meeting his gaze. There was defiance in her tone, but it was quieter now, tempered by exhaustion and relief. He didn't reply. Instead, he stood, offering his hand. "Come on, let's get out of here." As they walked out into the night, the city lights glimmered in the distance. Sophia felt the weight of everything, the past, the present, and the uncertainty of the future, but for the first time in years, she also felt something else. A fragile, terrifying, exhilarating hope. And somewhere deep in the quiet night, Alessandro realized that this hope was as much his salvation as hers. The ride back to the estate was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Sophia sat in the back seat, leg propped on a cushion, staring out at the blurred city lights, still trembling from the adrenaline. Alessandro drove with a precision that betrayed his exhaustion. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the wheel. The silence between them was thick, but not uncomfortable. It carried the weight of unspoken things, of past betrayals and present regrets. "I thought he'd never back down," Sophia finally said, voice low. "I thought we were done for." Alessandro didn't answer immediately. He kept his eyes on the road, fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel. "He won't stop," he said finally. "Not entirely. But he's learned something tonight. You're not a pawn, not anymore." Her eyes dropped to her hands. "I hope so. But what if he comes back?" Then Alessandro did something she hadn't seen him do before. He exhaled, long and slow, as if releasing the weight of the city from his shoulders. "Then we'll be ready, together." The word "together" caught in her chest. She wanted to hate it, wanted to reject it, but it felt undeniable. Back at the estate, Luca was awake, clutching his toy car, eyes wide, with relief the moment he saw his mother. Sophia knelt, scooping him into her arms. "Mommy's okay," she whispered, brushing hair from his face. Alessandro lingered in the doorway, watching. Luca's gaze flicked up to him, curious, cautious. "You," he said simply, pointing. Alessandro stepped forward slowly, keeping his movements deliberate. "Hi, Luca. I'm Alessandro. I help keep you safe." Luca studied him, tilting his head. "Safe?" "Yes," Alessandro replied softly. "Safe." Sophia felt a strange warmth watching them, despite everything Alessandro had changed. This wasn't the cold, controlling Mafia boss from before. This was a man learning to navigate love, responsibility, and fear all at once. Dinner was quiet. Alessandro didn't sit at the table in the same way as before. He kept a measured distance, letting Sophia and Luca lead, letting her reclaim her space. But when she poured him a cup of tea, he accepted it without a word, gratitude flickering in his eyes for the briefest moment. After dinner, Sophia carried Luca to bed. Alessandro lingered outside the doorway. "You're tired," he said quietly. "I'm fine," she replied. "No," he corrected gently. "You're exhausted, and you're holding a lot of weight alone." "Let me carry some of it." Sophia froze, caught off guard. "I don't know if I can let you." "You've been carrying it alone for years," he said. "Let me in, Sophia." Let me be part of this for you, for him. She didn't answer. She couldn't. She only watched him retreat into the shadows, and somewhere in the quiet of the estate, she felt the first threads of trust begin to weave between them again. The night stretched on, and Sophia lay awake in her room, listening to the steady rhythm of Luca's breathing from the next room. Her ankle throbbed softly, a reminder of the night's events, but it wasn't the pain that consumed her. It was the realization that the man who had once been her greatest danger was now her greatest protection, and maybe, one day, her greatest love. Alessandro sat alone in his study, staring at the city skyline. His hands rested on the polished wood of his desk, fingers tracing invisible lines of strategy and regret. For the first time in years, he wasn't planning power plays or revenge. He was planning something else, something terrifying, something vulnerable. He was planning to love her, to protect her, to make up for the years he had lost. A soft knock on the study door made him turn. Sophia stood there, barefoot, her eyes wide, carrying both caution and courage. "I can't sleep," she admitted softly. He gestured for her to sit. She did, careful with her leg. Silence stretched, but it was different this time. Not heavy, not suffocating, measured, like breathing in tandem for the first time after years apart. "You came for him," she said finally. "For Luca." "You didn't have to." "I did," he replied simply. "Because you both matter to me, and because I can't let anyone hurt you again. Not her, not him, not you." Sophia swallowed, the weight of his words pressing against her chest. "I don't know if I can forgive the past," she whispered. "Not fully, not yet." "Then we start with the present," he said. "We protect what matters. We rebuild, one step at a time." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time she saw the man beyond the reputation, beyond the fear, beyond the pain. She saw a man capable of love, capable of change, and capable of sacrifice. The night deepened around them, thick with possibility and fragile hope. And for the first time in years, Sophia didn't feel alone. Somewhere, beyond the walls of the estate, the city continued its ceaseless rhythm. But inside, a quiet sanctuary had formed, a fragile, complicated, perfect kind of peace. And Alessandro knew, with a certainty that unsettled and grounded him all at once, that nothing would ever be the same again. Dawn came slow and heavy, the kind of dawn that draped itself over the estate like a promise and a warning all at once. Sophia woke first, still sore from the ankle, still carrying the weight of last night's terror. She stretched carefully, careful not to aggravate the injury, and glanced at Luca sleeping soundly beside her. His small chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, innocent and unaware, and something inside her ached with both love and fear. Alessandro was already gone, or at least she thought he was. She heard the faint rustle of movement below, and soon his footsteps came up the stairs, deliberate but quiet. He appeared at the doorway, dark eyes fixed on her, unreadable yet soft in a way that unsettled her. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," she replied cautiously, not sure what to say. Her throat felt dry, thoughts scattered between fear and estranged, budding hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. He stepped closer, careful to keep distance respectful. "How's the leg?" "Better," she lied, though the dull throb reminded her it was far from healed. "Painful, but manageable." Alessandro studied her, expression unreadable. "You pushed yourself too far last night," he said. "You shouldn't have. Not with Luca, not with your safety in mind." "I had to," she said quietly. "I can't just hide forever." That's what he wanted. "And risking yourself doesn't make you brave," he countered, eyes locking with hers. "It makes you vulnerable, and I won't let anyone hurt him or you again." For a moment they were quiet, the words hanging heavy between them. She saw something behind his control, something raw and human, guilt, regret, and a longing she had buried under years of survival. Breakfast was awkward but necessary. Luca insisted on sitting between them, handing Alessandro his toy car, and Alessandro allowed it. Sophia watched, fascinated and conflicted. This man, this Mafia boss who had once been untouchable and cold, now moved with patience, awareness, and a strange gentleness that made her heart both ache and lift. After breakfast, Sophia and Alessandro walked through the estate gardens, Luca toddling ahead with Anna's watchful eyes on him. Sofia leaned lightly on Alessandro's arm every step. Careful. Do you ever regret it? She asked softly. Regret what? Letting me go, letting me leave, not being there when, her voice faltered. Alessandro squeezed her arm gently. Do you think I didn't suffer? Do you think I didn't see the emptiness every day? She swallowed. I didn't know. I thought. You thought I didn't care, he said, voice low. I cared more than you can imagine, but I was a man who didn't know how to love properly. I only knew control. And I lost the only thing I shouldn't have. Silence fell. Sofia's chest tightened. She realized that the man before her was not the same man who had ruled with fear, who had crushed her trust and ankle alike. He was softer, more aware, but still dangerous, still powerful, and that combination, softness and danger, was intoxicating and terrifying. A sudden commotion drew them to the front gates. Security reported a delivery van approaching, a routine one, but Sofia's stomach twisted. Every delivery, every shadow, was now a potential threat. Alessandro's hand brushed hers instinctively, and she felt the tremor in his touch, the tension he could no longer hide. The driver stepped out, holding a large envelope. Alessandro took it, opening it with caution. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a photograph of Luca sleeping in his crib, taken from afar, with a message scrawled across it, "You cannot hide forever." Sofia's blood ran cold. She dropped to her knees beside the car, panic clawing at her throat. Alessandro's eyes blazed, dark and dangerous. Stay with me, he said firmly, pulling her to her feet. We're done hiding, he said. Voice low, controlled but deadly. Not just from Marco, from anyone who thinks they can threaten her or him. From now on, we fight. Sofia looked at him, fear and something else, hope, trust and unspoken love mingling in her chest. We. Yes, he said simply. We. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in that we, even as shadows of the past lingered and the city outside waited with quiet malice. That night, as Luca slept, Sofia and Alessandro sat in the study, plotting, preparing, and finally talking. Words about the past, about regrets, about lost time. Every sentence brought them closer, threading their fractured lives together with fragile honesty. You could have reached me, she said finally, her voice soft, almost a whisper. I didn't know if you would let me, he replied. You had built walls, strong walls. And I, his voice faltered, raw and human, I had to respect them, even when it hurt me. Sofia reached out, her hand finding his. And now, he said, locking his fingers with hers, we rebuild together. No more running. No more hiding. I promise you that. Outside the city slept, but inside, a different rhythm had begun, one of trust, of fragile hope, and the unspoken beginnings of a love neither dared to name aloud. And Alessandro realized that this, right here, was worth more than power, fear, or vengeance, worth more than anything he had ever had. The following days blurred into a tense rhythm, a careful dance between the past and the present. Sofia tried to keep life normal for Luca, meals, playtime, bedtime stories, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every knock at the gate, every shadow outside a window, sent her heart racing. And yet, Alessandro was there. Every step, every glance, every silent presence reminded her that she was no longer alone. He had taken control of the estate's security, layered defenses she didn't even know existed. But it wasn't just the physical protection that unsettled her. It was the emotional one. He hovered in small ways, watching her when she thought he wasn't, anticipating her needs before she spoke them. Sofia felt a mix of gratitude and weariness. This man had been her greatest danger. Now he was her anchor. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in bruised shades of pink and gold, Sofia found herself alone with Alessandro in the garden. Luca had been tucked in early, exhausted, after a day of play and laughter that masked the tension that neither mother nor child could completely escape. You've changed, she said quietly, watching his profile against the fading light. He turned toward her, eyebrows slightly raised. Do you think so? You're different than the man I left, she said carefully. Less sharp-edged, more human. Alessandro smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. I learned the hard way that control doesn't mean love, that it doesn't protect the things that matter most. I lost you. I lost Luca. And I can't lose either of you again." Her chest tightened. "You can't undo the past." "No," he said softly, "but I can try to make the future better. I can fight for you. For him. For us." Sophia swallowed, the lump in her throat stubborn. "I don't know if I can trust love like that, not after everything." "You don't have to," he said gently. "You just have to trust me. Let me be here. That's enough for now." She nodded, more to herself than him, and for a long moment they stood in silence. The wind rustled through the garden, carrying the faint scent of jasmine, and it felt impossibly fragile, like a promise waiting to be kept. Then came a sound that made Sophia's blood run cold. A vehicle approaching the gate. Engine low and deliberate. Alessandro stiffened immediately, eyes narrowing. "Stay inside," he ordered, voice tight. Sophia hesitated. "I'm not hiding anymore." "You're staying alive," he said. "Nothing else matters right now." She nodded, biting her lip. From the window, she could see the outline of the vehicle and the unmistakable presence of men who did not belong in her life, or Luca's. Alessandro moved like a shadow, disappearing from view and reappearing in moments, commanding and precise. Sophia watched, chest tightening, as he confronted them outside. The exchange was quick, words sharp and controlled. Then the men retreating into the night like ghosts unwilling to linger. Alessandro returned, his coat dusted with the cold night, eyes shadowed. "They know we're not afraid," he said. Sophia's heart pounded. "And if they come back?" "They will," he admitted. "But so will I. Always." She wanted to be angry at him for everything that had happened, for the life stolen from her and Luca, for the broken trust and shattered years. But she couldn't. She saw him in that moment, not just the Mafia boss, not just the man who could command fear, but the man who had come back for them, who was willing to fight for their safety, their family, their life. That night, as she watched Luca sleep, she felt a flicker of something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Hope. Fragile, tentative, but real. Alessandro stayed close, leaning against the doorway, eyes on both mother and son. His presence was a quiet promise, one that neither could deny. Sophia realized, with a mixture of fear and relief, that the world outside could be cruel and relentless. But inside the estate, for this small family, there was safety. There was trust being rebuilt, thread by delicate thread. And maybe, just maybe, there was love. She turned to Alessandro, who had finally crossed the room to stand beside her. "You really mean it?" she whispered. "I do," he said simply. "I'm here. Always." And for the first time since the attack, since the broken ankle, since the years apart, Sophia allowed herself to believe that perhaps they could survive this world together, that perhaps Luca could grow up without fear, and that perhaps the man she had once loved and feared could be the man who finally kept his promises. Outside, the city hummed its ceaseless rhythm. Inside, the estate breathed quietly, a fragile sanctuary built on trust, vigilance, and the beginnings of a love neither time nor fear could fully destroy. Morning came slow, the kind of light that softened edges but revealed everything in stark clarity. Sophia woke first, careful with her ankle, careful with every breath, as if the pain could remind her of what had happened, or warn her it might happen again. But this time, the estate felt different, protected, alive, a home. She padded quietly down the hall, Luca's soft giggle guiding her. Alessandro was already in the kitchen, standing over 2 steaming mugs of coffee, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. For a moment, he looked ordinary, not the untouchable, commanding Mafia boss. Just a man who had been through too much, standing guard in a quiet morning. "You're up early," he said, voice low, tired but gentle. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Thought I'd check on him." He nodded, eyes softening as they followed her gaze to Luca, who was stacking blocks and humming under his breath. Alessandro didn't move immediately. He simply watched, careful not to disturb the fragile rhythm of life that had begun to form. "Morning," Luca said, looking up at her. "Did the big man go away?" Sophia's breath caught. Alessandro crouched to Luca's level. "No, buddy. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere." Lucas smiled, small and trusting, and something in Sophia's chest eased. She realized that every sleepless night, every threat, every moment of fear had led to this: safety, presence, and a man who could hold them both without breaking them. Alessandro straightened. "You should eat," he said softly, "and don't argue." She chuckled faintly, allowing herself a small sense of normalcy. They sat at the table together, breakfast quiet but alive with soft laughter, with gentle conversation about nothing, about everything. For the first time in years, Sophia allowed herself to imagine a life not ruled by fear. Later, Alessandro took her hand. "We need to talk," he said, eyes serious now, shadows of the past lingering. Sophia followed him to the garden, where sunlight warmed the ground and the air carried a hint of spring. "About what?" she asked. "About us," he said simply. "About the life we lost, the choices we made, and the life we can still build." Her heart raced. She had waited years for this, longed for it, feared it, but now it stood before her, real and fragile. She began, words catching. "I don't know if I can forgive everything." "You don't have to," he said, voice steady. "I don't expect that. But I can promise you this. I won't hurt you again. I won't let anyone take Luca from you. And I won't leave. Ever." Sophia's throat tightened. For years, she had protected him, had built walls so high that no one, not him, not anyone, could cross. And yet here he was, willing to respect the walls, willing to wait, willing to rebuild trust brick by brick. "I believe you," she whispered, finally, tears brimming. "But it won't be easy." "No," he admitted. "Nothing worth saving ever is." They stood there for a long time, hands clasped, silence stretching around them. Luca ran past, giggling, chasing shadows of birds in the garden, reminding them both of what mattered most. Alessandro's gaze followed him, full of awe and determination, and Sophia realized she could finally breathe. That evening they sat together in the study, light from the city spilling through the windows, casting a golden glow across the room. Words weren't necessary anymore. Presence spoke louder than promises. Hands found each other, and for the first time, Sophia let herself feel not fear, not regret, but hope. The years of separation, of broken trust, of pain and danger, all of it had brought them here, to this fragile sanctuary. And while the world outside would never stop testing them, inside these walls they were together, fully, fiercely, and without apology. Alessandro finally spoke, voice low and filled with a kind of reverent awe. "We start again," he said. "No past, no running, just us." Sophia leaned against him, the weight of the world easing off her shoulders for the first time in years. "Just us?" she echoed. Outside, the city pulsed on, indifferent, but inside the estate, some stronger had taken root: trust, protection, and a love that had survived storms, pain, and betrayal. A love that would endure. And as Luca climbed into her lap, hugging her tightly, Alessandro pulled her hand into his, sealing the moment. The past could no longer reach them. The future was theirs to write. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, because some love is worth fighting for.